Part 20. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 191. Drama couldn't help but show a look of embarrassment on his face when he heard this. However, he didn't mean to pursue this issue too much. He put down the water glass in his hand and sat on the edge of the bed face to face with Droe. Actually, there are some people's considerations here. Anyway, this garbage is everywhere. As long as you give it a little support, it can infinitely amplify their desires, drive them to destroy, and then arouse public resentment and backfire on Joey. If you want to talk to these people, it is impossible to use the language of normal people. You must use language they can understand. This is why I do this. This is also the fastest and most effective way to limit the scope of confrontation and protect ordinary people. Xiu shook his head lightly and said helplessly, I don't like to do it. It doesn't make any sense to me, and it's very tiring. I will help you get rid of the tail. Dramu looked at Xiu and could only accept it. Unexpectedly, Xiu shook his head. This is a good opportunity. What's the meaning? Doctor, go to Miss Joy and tell her directly that this is an opportunity to consolidate public opinion. At the same time, you can establish a clear enemy to unite everyone, which will be of great benefit to the current situation. You bring people from the TV station to find the victims and express condolences according to my notes. At the same time, you take this opportunity to expose the hypocrisy of some people and publicize the harm caused by the terrorist attacks caused by these people to ordinary people. Xiu said some words, and his intention to counterattack was obvious, and he wanted to use these people to make big news. It's a pity that those people are very cautious and use indirect channels for funding. It is a waste of energy and little benefit to investigate. Just doesn't this mean? Dramu raised the notes in his hand. Xiu curled his lips when he heard this and said nonchalantly, I dare to admit it if I dare to do it. I am right here. After hearing this, Miss Joy will come and catch me and wait for you at any time. After saying that, Xiu went back to bed and yawned while leaving a few words. Okay, if nothing happens, I'll go to sleep. Dramu wanted to laugh when he saw Xiu like this. He knew the importance of this to Miss Joy. If she adopted this plan, it would be impossible to touch Xiu, not to mention that he would not be able to see anything happen to him. That is to say, this kid said this just because he was sure that nothing would happen to him. According to Droe's understanding of him, he would be the first to run if there was any problem. Dro stood up and was about to leave when Xiu suddenly spoke. Remember to bring some supplies and a medical team. Some of those people are in difficulty, and there are many injured. Is there anything else? Help me close the door. Droki couldn't help but smile when he heard this. This was still the smart and weird boy, but reality forced him to make some choices. When the door closed, Xiu turned over and opened his eyes to look at the ceiling. Scenes flashed through his mind, and Xiu's expression changed a little. In fact, the girl did not commit suicide at that time, and she did not kill the three robbers. After the girl witnessed her parents being killed and suffered such abuse again, she was dead both physically and mentally. She no longer had the belief to live. Every second she stayed was torture for her. When he saw the girl, she had already lost her ability to move. It was difficult to even raise her hand, let alone kill someone with a knife. At that time, she just wanted Xiu to kill her and seek liberation. The knife he sent into the girl's heart. Warm blood flowed through his fingers. It was a feeling that he would never forget. He took the girl's body and, after finding her parents' graves, placed her in them. Rest in peace. Xiu slowly closed his eyes, his expression neither sad nor happy, but a teardrop slipped down. It was already noon when he woke up again, but his head felt like water had filled it, and he felt very uncomfortable, just like feeling nauseous. I knew there would be such a problem. Xiu muttered, holding his head. There was too much fuss with Casey last night, and his brain couldn't bear this high-intensity invocation of superpowers, otherwise he wouldn't have woken up until now. Xiu quickly dug into his backpack and took out a bottle of medicine and drank it to feel better. It's just that those medicines are almost used up, and it's time to prepare a new batch. After recovering a little, Xiu released all the elves, and then took the giant pincer mantis into the bathroom. "Thank you for your hard work last night." Xiu wiped it with a brush and then flushed it. The dirt and blood stains on it were washed away, and the blood-streaked water flowed into the sewer. The giant pincer mantis went on a killing spree last night, and basically none of the fish-like elves were its enemies. Xiu Du was a little surprised. Although what those people can get must be the trashiest elves, but the gap is too outrageous, right? Or is it the result of the training you set up for the giant pincer mantis and its own efforts? He didn't know much about it, because he couldn't tell anything at all. But it also directly shows that the giant pincer mantis is pretty good. Old Chinese medicine massage, who comes first? Xiu wiped off the water stains on the giant pincer mantis, and then shouted outside. "Driving the motorcycle that I snatched from those people last night, I was wandering on the street. Today's situation seemed even more exaggerated than yesterday. Originally, it was a bustling commercial area, but most of the shops have closed down. Even if there are one or two open for business, they are deserted. Only shops selling daily necessities have some popularity, but not many. You can still hold it in." Xiu couldn't help but smile when looking at those places. There were not many people going out, and even if there were, they passed by in a hurry, showing a very sensitive resistance to everything around them. But when he came to his own store, he saw many people queuing up. The queue was more than 10 meters long and extended to the other side of the street. In addition to the supply of food and other supplies here, there is another reason for this scene. There are officials wearing uniforms and carrying Pokémon staying nearby, and there are 3 cars parked nearby. These are certainly not the people stationed here. No matter how important this place is, it is not worth such an arrangement. The reason why so many trainers really stay here is because this is a resting point for nearby patrol points. Those trainers patrolling nearby will come here to rest. Xiu had planned to choose this place. This intersection is the central area of the nearby streets. When making the patrol plan, he directly rejected Miss Joy's intention to arrange the team directly. Instead, he used it as a resting point and provided them with food and water. The reason for this is that with the military strength at that time, there must not be many people who can be arranged to this place, and the protection is definitely not enough. However, as a resting point and for emergency treatment around it, it is equivalent to the garrison of 2 teams of troops, and some individual trainers. Although it is nominally a resting place, they can't just ignore it if something really happens. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 192. Xiu wandered over and attracted the attention of those people, but most of these people knew him, and both parties nodded. At this time, most of the staff in the store came from the Elf Center to assist, because there was really no manpower available at this time. Xiao Yuan was busy inside, and Xiu was too embarrassed to disturb him. He parked his car and looked outside before turning around and leaving. There is no problem with material supply. This is due to the application of black technology and space technology in this world. Otherwise, Xiu would never be able to bring so much food in 2 trains. Fortunately, in the city, Joey's power can radiate. Although it is a bit chaotic, there is still order. But it's hard to tell after leaving the city. If an ordinary convoy encounters the rocket's interception, it will be a dead end. Sending multiple people to escort is very expensive, because the initiative lies with Team Rocket. But after so many days, the road must be almost clear, right? Wandering all the way to the warehouse, I felt something strange as soon as I got close to Xiu, but I didn't care. I went inside and searched around but found no sign of Xiao Chun. After shouting a few words, I finally found her among the goods. What are you doing? Yeah. Xiao Chun regarded the goods as ladders and jumped down step by step. Xiu's heart trembled as he watched. How troublesome it would be if the wound collapsed. Come here quickly, I'll take a look at your wound and change the dressing. As soon as she got off the ground, Xiu pulled her in front of him. He squatted down and rolled up her clothes, exposing the bandage on her lower abdomen. Take it yourself. Xiu let her take the clothes, then took off the bandage, revealing the wound inside. I have to say that people in this world have very strong vitality. There is no infection or inflammation. They are showing a good trend and they will probably be fine in a few days. After a good meal, Xiu put new medicine and bandages on her. Okay, put it down and I'll look behind you. Xiao Chun immediately let go of his hand, the clothes fell down to cover the bandaged wound again, and then he turned around obediently. The wound on the back is very small and has basically healed, so there is no major problem. It's probably not very convenient for you here. Follow me back to the elf center later. Xiao Chun looked a little unnatural when he heard the name of the elf center, and it was obvious that he had some psychological shadow about this place. Don't be afraid, I'm here. Xiu waved his hand casually and explained while packing up the props and the garbage, and your new identity needs to be obtained from the elf center. I will help you figure it out. Xiao Chun didn't react much, just looked at Xiu's busy figure. After dealing with the traces, Xiu went out to explain to the people stationed here, and then drove back to the elf center with Xiao Chun. We're here, get off the car. Xiu stopped the car, patted Xiao Kun's hand on his waist, and then lifted her out of the car with one hand after letting go. Wait a minute, you don't have to say anything. Xiu was suddenly confused. He forgot that Xiao Chun was speechless in the first place. He was a little embarrassed for a moment, so he had to say something. Anyway, just follow me and I will take care of the rest. Xiu led her into the elf center. At this time, there were more people coming in and out than before, but most of them were ordinary people. There were not many trainers waiting for treatment, but the medical staff were still very busy. Is there any room left? Xiu asked as he approached the front desk. There are no more ordinary rooms, but there are still a few large rooms. The young lady at the front desk obviously knew Xiu and whispered. These luxurious rooms are for entertaining important people like Dramu and are not open to the public. That's why she is so careful. It is not a matter of money. Now that it is vacant, it means that some people have left Jaban City. As for how they left? There are many ways, but the power of money cannot be estimated by ordinary people. Come one and put it in the doctor's name. Xiu Na was rude and had no intention of saving money for Dramu. After some inside operations, the young lady handed him the new key. Where's the doctor? I went to comfort the people with Miss Joy. Doctor, come back and talk to him. Understood, the young lady nodded seriously, and she thought it was a very difficult task. Now is a special period. If someone wants to bring an unregistered person, it will definitely not work, but who said his status is special? After Xiu was done with it, he took Xiao Chun up there and found the room. The location is different from Dramu's room, but the specifications are similar. Okay, you can stay here first. Don't go out if you have nothing to do. If you need anything, you can come to me. I'm in 702. Xiu casually threw the key on the table, left some supplies and left. He still has a lot of things to deal with, so he doesn't have time to follow her every day. Xiu sat in front of the computer to deal with O'Hara's backlog of affairs, and at the same time made plans for the company's future situation. I waited until the afternoon to see Droe. What are you looking for me for? It took a day, Xiu asked curiously. How can we just leave our things behind like some unknown hero? Droe looked at Xiu with a strange expression. He didn't know what he thought of and suddenly laughed. You don't have a lot of clothes, Right. Do I look like someone who uses his own things? Xiu curled his lips and changed the topic. Let's not talk about it for now. I have something I want to ask the doctor for help with. After that, he led Professor Oak to Xiaokun's room. How do you know people here? Professor Oak looked at the room in front of him with some surprise. When did Xiu come here? Wait a minute. Xiu knocked on the door and shouted. It's me, open the door. The door opened, Xiu entered first, and then pushed the door open. Doctor, come in and talk. Professor Oak certainly noticed the child, and his already confused mood became even more. But he could only follow him in. Let me introduce you first. This is the famous Professor Oak, and she is Xiaochun. After taking a look at the situation in the room, Professor Oak's eyes fell on the child, and his brows frowned slightly. When he saw Xiaochun shrinking behind Xiu, he moved his eyes to Xiu. Explain. I picked her up. When Xiu said this, Dr. Oak's expression changed slightly, but it was not enough to impress him. Her parents are gone, and she was abused by some people and became mute, and then I rescued her. Dr. Oak exhaled heavily and asked, what do you want me to do for you? I want to give her a new starting point. Please help me redo her identity. Dr. Oak listened to Xiu's words, and then looked at Xiaokun's appearance. I don't know what he thought of, and slowly agreed. I can help you, but you have to be responsible. Thanks to Qiaomei 81, Zugxiu Xiaoying and overseas people for their monthly tickets, and I feel that Lumiya's rewards. Thank you all for your support. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 193. This matter became easier with the help of Dr. Otherwise it would be very difficult to deal with it if Xiu came forward alone. After a brief handover here, Xiaoya didn't stay too long, gave Xiaochun enough time to rest, and left the room with Dr. Dr. seemed a little mysterious when he came out here, which aroused Xiu's curiosity and couldn't help but ask. What happened? The signal transmitter in Jaban City was destroyed just now, and the channels for ordinary people to understand the outside world were cut off. This is normal, I think they should have done this a long time ago. Xiu didn't react much. He had guessed that this was going on when he asked Miss Joy to send people to occupy the TV station, but he didn't expect to take action so late. But Team Rocket has sent out its main force, Xiu asked. The signal transmitter is inside the TV station, and official personnel are stationed there. It is difficult to break through without a large number of main forces. It was a traitor lurking in the TV station who did it. Engineers are repairing it. Anyway, I don't think it will be possible in a short time. Xiu pondered for a moment, then opened his mouth and said unceremoniously, then we will fight back. How to say? That insect-type gym is where they finance, train him. If we take him out, it will greatly damage the morale of the opponent. Do you have evidence? This training process started before the incident happened. I also learned about it from those people, but now the traces have most likely been cleared. That's a gym recognized by the Alliance. If we do it rashly without evidence. Dr. said and looked at Xiu, the meaning was already clear. Haha, Xiu Yin sneered pitifully, I didn't say we wanted the official to take action. Why can't we reverse the situation if they have a traitor? What do you mean? Dr. suddenly felt something was wrong. I have more than a dozen of those people's elves here. I think the elf center must have confiscated more. Since these elves participated in the attack, they will most likely be destroyed afterwards, but why can't they be used? Dr. thought along Xiu's train of thought for a moment, and immediately understood what he meant, and was even more surprised. Good guy. I can think of something so outrageous. I want to see Miss Joy. Xiu knew that Dr. was not willing to cause more killings, not to mention that he did not have the power to mobilize troops, so it was better to communicate directly with Miss Joy. It must have been time-consuming and laborious to investigate that gym before. After all, his name was hanging there, so there was no reason not to move. But now that the signal transmitter has been destroyed, Miss Joy must be holding back her anger. Let's take a breath at this time. Dr. hesitated for a moment, but understood what Xiu meant and brought him to the office. As soon as they met Xiu here, he noticed that Miss Joy was even more haggard than when they met before. Although it was not obvious because of the makeup, her aura had indeed declined. She must have been overworked with the affairs these past few days. Dr. Xiao Xiu. When Miss Joy saw the two coming over, she smiled and nodded. But the way she looked at Xiu afterwards was a bit strange, whether it was regret or pity. Thank you for your hard work. These words made Xiu a little confused, and she didn't know what Dr. said to her. But that doesn't matter anymore. I heard Miss Joy is in trouble, and here's an idea that might help resolve the situation. Oh. Tell me. The corners of Xiu's lips raised slightly, and then he slowly revealed his plan. His idea was simple. Those elves couldn't escape the results of the purge anyway. Why not take advantage of it and let some trustworthy key members bring these elves to pretend to be Team Rocket to attack the insect gym? There is no need to actually kill or conquer it, just let the news spread. Then they revealed the news to the outside world, and those people couldn't bear it and prepared to clear the traces and run away. The best thing is to injure him but not kill him, and force him to escape and seek help from us. With him as a witness, Miss Joy will be able to have direct evidence by then. Whether it is forcing them to fight among themselves now or cleaning up afterward, she will have a bargaining chip. Hold it in your hand. To force him to a desperate end, we only need to. After saying that, Xiu smiled slightly and looked calm. No matter how he felt like a strategist who had a feather fan and silk scarf, and his aura were wiped out in ashes while talking and laughing. It's just that after hearing this, Miss Joy only felt that this man was 3 parts cunning and 7 parts ruthless. This guy has a big plan. No way to stay. Of course, just kidding, this is not a novel, no one was there to answer the question, he looked lonely. Miss Joy only found Xiu's idea very interesting. She was struggling to find clues and had already made up her mind almost as soon as Xiu mentioned it. This is the credit of delivering it to your doorstep, and you don't have to sacrifice much. It's a real profit. Okay. I agree. The expression on Miss Joy's face became even more excited, and she was obviously very satisfied with Xiu. Xiao Xiu, are you interested in taking charge of this matter? No, I don't understand tactical cooperation. Forced command will only delay things. I can go over and help or give you some suggestions. Miss Joy was obviously more satisfied after hearing Xiu's words. He is humble and does not seek credit for his work. This guy is very good. Let's do this. I'll ask Sachiko to help you, and you two can communicate. Miss Joy called the assistant over with a word, and everyone discussed and perfected the plan. Then they went to dispatch personnel and elves, while Xiu left with Professor Oak. The situation can be stabilized now, but if you do this, it will definitely cause new fluctuations. What do you want to do? Dr. Oak actually saw the hidden dangers of this action very clearly. Provoking those people to strife will definitely make them more crazy, and he didn't know how many ordinary people would be affected. He believed that maintaining the current situation was the safest and best way. Doctor, if we don't seize this opportunity to take the initiative, those people will not be implicated after the matter is over, and will not be punished for provoking the disaster. They will still be high above. As for the victims, no one will remember them anymore, and they will die if they die. As Xiu said this, his face became gloomy, and his voice trembled slightly due to excessive force. I've never been for justice. Reality tells me that there is no such thing. I just can't stand why they use the lives of ordinary people as bargaining chips. I want them to bear the responsibility of those lives. There are some debts they can't escape. Dro couldn't help but close his eyes and take a deep breath when he heard this. When he opened his eyes, his face was full of helplessness. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 194. He knew Xiu was right. If it really wanted to end like this, even if Joey knew they were behind it, he couldn't take action directly without evidence. If he really wanted to investigate, he would just be dragged into the quagmire and trapped in endless disputes. And what about those who have resources and connections? Afterwards, he was still a big shot in Jaban City. As for the ordinary people who died, it's just like Xiu said. If you die, you will die. It's just that there's no telling how many people are involved in this chaos. Doctor, now as long as we catch a few clues, they can make them suspicious of each other, thus exposing more clues. You only have one chance, once you pass it, it's gone. Xiu said casually, his expression seemed a bit normal, without the gnashing of teeth just now. Alas, Daramu shook his head slowly. I don't care about this matter anymore, you can figure it out yourself. Xiu silently watched Daramu's leaving figure, and then walked in another direction to meet up with Joey Singh. He wanted to provoke internal strife among those people, of course, not just the righteous Ling Ran, he said. Another problem here is that he found that those people were too calm. If this continued, the market collapse in Jaban City that he needed would not occur. He needed those people to bleed. He can only profit by forcing them to cause chaos. Even though Miss Joy worked hard and showed great interest, she just needed evidence to find the culprit and give him an explanation. There is no justice, it's all about interests. It's no wonder that Dro, who sees everything clearly, is like this. He is the only one who really thinks about ordinary people, but no one is like him. Here Xiu came to the appointed place. Apart from Joey Singh, there were more than 10 people in uniforms. It looked like he was a trainer that Joey had trained internally. What stood in front of those people was a box filled with red and white balls. Although they look similar to red and white balls, there are still subtle functional differences. These pokeballs can be locked and can only be opened from the outside. You're here. Joy noticed Xiu's arrival and signaled him if he wanted to say something. Xiu waved his hand casually and stood under the team members. He has no interest in showing off. When Joey saw this, he didn't mean to talk nonsense. He continued the previous topic and roughly described the mission. Now you choose your own elves. There is no limit to the number, but you must tame them as quickly as possible to ensure that they can carry out orders. Yes. Everyone answered in response, and then moved forward to receive the elf balls in order. Most of the elves in these elf balls are very common and of average strength, and there are only a few types that come and go. And since these elves can be tamed in the hands of those people, it means that they have been tamed once, and those who can survive until now are not diehards, and their adaptability may be good. In fact, based on Xiu's understanding last night, in order to quickly expand their strength, those people once plundered large quantities of elves from the wild and purchased such elves from the black market. The elf and the trainer have nothing to do with each other, they are just obedient. This provides them with feasibility. Those people took the time to choose and tame them, but Xiu didn't have this problem. The elves in the dozen or so elf balls in his hand were extremely honest. It's just that he was surprised by Joey Singh's strength. First of all, having the surname Joy and being a personal assistant shows her identity. In this world, surnames are a very serious matter, and most people don't have such a thing, such as his original name, Kashiu, or ordinary people like Yun. Having a surname means that the person has a family heritage. At least the ancestors were wealthy, so that the surname can be passed down. Further examples include Yulong Du from the Yulong family, or Zifyuki Dao from Duan Company. For this type of character, the family power is more powerful than the person, so when they are called, they always call out the last names, Watanabe and Daigo. Only important people in their family, such as the person who named the surname or the contemporary patriarch, can use the surname, which is an honorific title. For example, Dao's father founded the Duan Company and got the surname Zivuchi. Others usually call him President Zivuchi, but his full name is Zivuchi Hibiscus. Only those who are relatively close and familiar with him will call him President Zivuchi Hibiscus or a mix. Another possibility is that although this person has inherited the surname and is not a patriarch, his personal ability is even greater than that of the family, so calling him by his surname still shows respect. An example of this is Dr. Oki. His full name is Oki Sueshin, but the outside world calls him Dr. Oki or his professional title, doctor, and few people call him Sueshin. The only people who are qualified to be called like this are those who are the proud ones of their time and are familiar with them. Someone like Shiu, no matter how familiar he is with Dr. cannot call him Sueshin. Seniority is here. Moreover, Dro is still a bit of a teacher to Shiu, which makes it even more impossible. In addition to passing it down from your parents or creating one yourself, there are other ways to get a surname. That is to join some special organizations, such as Joi and Juncha. In fact, the surnames Joi and Juncha represent professions, similar to teachers or doctors. When you are qualified to become such a person, it is equivalent to obtaining a surname, and this surname is not passed down, unless the children also pass the corresponding assessment and become one of them. But this is inherited from the organization, not from the parents. So for such people, the surname is generally called, which represents a respectful title. For example, everyone calls her Miss Joy, even Professor Oak said so. Since Joy Seen has obtained this surname, it means that she is a core member of Joy, which is very different from those staff members of the Pokemon Center. But Joy is famous for healing, and fighting is almost exclusive to Juncha. Can she really do it? Joycing also noticed Chiu's gaze, and couldn't help but look at him, then walked over and asked, "Is there anything?" "No, I just wondered why you haven't chosen a Pokemon to prepare. Don't you have one?" Joycing has a lively personality, or she is more relaxed when facing younger people like Chiu. "I have already picked it before." After saying that, Chiu took out a Pokeball and opened it with his backhand, and an Arbok appeared on the field. "Turn around." Chiu raised his hand and gestured. The Arbok seemed a little scared when he saw Chiu, but still twisted his body and turned around according to Chiu's instructions. Joey saw this and his mouth curled up slightly, which was a bit interesting. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 195. At night, 3 a.m. 3 vans parked in a hidden corner, and then a group of people got out of the vans and lined up in 2 rows. These people were wearing ordinary clothes, and their heights were average, without any outstanding features. As for facial features, there were none, because these people were wearing gas masks. One of them came to the front, scanned the team and made a few gestures. The team moved silently. On the contrary, Shiu gradually left the team and hung behind. He was outside the team and did not have to follow them. Moreover, Shiu had told Xiao Yuxing before that he had considerable freedom of action. Soon the team touched the vicinity of the gym, and Shiu observed the environment in the dark. Shiu and Xiao Yuxing learned that this gym also has a heritage, but they are not family style, but a similar inheritance model to that of master and apprentice. Recruit apprentices, then train them, and finally get the approval of the gym owner to inherit the gym. Ordinary families can also send their children here. Some charge money to learn skills, while others directly accept them as disciples of the gym. They will also take in some orphans and street children. Different situations teach different contents. Only core disciples can truly learn the inheritance of the gym. According to Joey, this gym was the largest in Viridian City in the past. Because the threshold for students was low, many people sent their children here to be apprentices. At that time, it was one of the few opportunities for ordinary people to jump out of their own class. This gym is mainly composed of bug-type Pokemon. The most famous one is not those fancy bug-type Pokemon, but the giant beedrill that is common in Viridian Forest and even in the world. The giant beedrill cultivated by their gym is different from those giant beedrills that are like roadside fish. On the contrary, it is very powerful and even breaks through its own limits. According to legend, the old gym owner's trump card was a giant beedrill. It can be said that in that era, it was invincible in Viridian City. Those challengers were defeated without even seeing the giant beedrill take action. Of course, there are some other bug-type Pokemon in the gym, but none of them are as inspiring as this ordinary beedrill that can break through itself. It's just that the inheritance of this gym seems to have a problem. The reason is that the previous old gym owner died suddenly without any signs, and before he could leave the inheritance intact, the remaining core apprentices fought for the position of gym owner, and finally the gym fell apart. And the winner is naturally the current gym owner. It's just that the loss of inheritance and factional fighting caused most of the students to leave, and he was the only main force left. The gym's former glory is gone, and it can only survive by relying on its foundation. But it was able to become the largest gym in Viridian City at that time, so its foundation was naturally strong, and it had some foundation to be able to hold on until now. This gym is very different from the grass-type gym that was repaired before. The area of the gym is very exaggerated. This piece of land alone is worth a lot of money. No wonder those people wanted to put the training location here. A group of people secretly sneaked in small teams, and when they got close to there, they released the Pokemon one after another. All of them were Butterfree, Mormoth, and other Pokemons, rising up and spraying scale powder over the gym. Although most of the students in this gym have been lost, there are still a few people. And the Pokemons kept in the gym also need to be dealt with. Shiu hid behind and watched their actions silently. At the beginning, it was smooth, and the captured Pokemons were able to perform the tasks. But problems soon arose. These Pokemons were temporarily pulled over and had no loyalty at all. One Pokemon wanted to escape and accidentally touched the Pokemons kept in the gym. The scale powder had not yet completely covered the gym, and this amount really couldn't work quickly. At this time, several giant beedrills soared into the sky, which then triggered a series of fluctuations. For a while, the whole gym exploded. However, those people did not show panic reactions, but immediately integrated and threw pokeballs. More than a dozen Arboks and Arboks appeared on the field and sprayed dissolving liquid at the giant beedrills, and sprayed venom if they couldn't. The strength of the beedrills was already weakened by the scale powder. After being stained with dissolving liquid and venom, the wings of the beedrills were damaged and they could not maintain their flight. They fell from the air and struggled on the ground. The beedrills that lost their ability to fly were not to be feared, but the apprentices and gym masters took this opportunity to react. Ah! Who dares to break into my gym so boldly? A skinny middle-aged man rushed out and threw 3 pokeballs, 2 beedrills, and 1 Heracross. These 3 Pokemons are larger than ordinary ones, and they are in good spirits. It can be seen that they have been carefully cultivated. A beedrill stayed beside him, and the other 2 rushed towards those people. And those students also woke up one after another and began to release Pokemons to fight back under the organization of some people. Various insect Pokemons came out, most of them were beedrills, but there were also many other Pokemons, but they were all found in the evergreen forest. Beedrills are gregarious Pokemons. When they gather together, they are the strongest. Moreover, the distance was too far, so the venom of those Arboks could not reach them, but Drill's missile needle could reach them. According to the pre-planned plan, those people dispersed the Arboks and other Pokemons, dodged the long-range attacks, and launched a counter-attack after shortening the distance. And they didn't dwell on this, instead they released more Pokemons, and for a moment they outnumbered the students. The battle started, and it was a short time before the fight began. The two Pokemons of the gym owner were even more ferocious. As soon as Heracross landed, he charged at the enemy, and when he made contact, he lowered his head. His huge forked horn pushed forward with unparalleled momentum, and actually crashed through the enemy formation, leaving countless corpses behind, just like a tank crushing infantry, without any suspense. This giant bee did not engage in long-range attacks with the main force, but broke away from the main force and rushed into the enemy formation. Its double guns were wrapped in silver light at night, and its body was as fast as lightning. It killed the enemy at will while stabbing and swinging, and there was no enemy who could match it wherever it passed. After a few quick turns, only the pierced corpses were left on the ground, and an area nearby was cleared in just a few seconds. The figure in the moonlight was like Zhao Zilong's reincarnation, with a silver gun and a white horse going in and out 7 times, leaving only a few red flowers on his body. As soon as these two elves appeared, they showed strength far beyond those small fish. Even though the loss of inheritance and internal disputes led to its decline, it still had that foundation. Sure enough, Xiu whispered to himself when he saw the situation, a centipede will not die until it is stiff. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 196. The situation on the field was originally tilted towards them, but with the gym owner's move, the situation was reversed in an instant. Seeing this, the students burst into strong cheers, and the gym owner also gave a few encouragements, wanting to kill the intruders. On the contrary, Joey suffered a large number of casualties in a short period of time, and the elves who were already fence-sitters began to show signs of wanting to collapse and escape. At such a critical moment, Xiu did not intend to take action, and just watched the melee on the field silently. Since you dare to come here, I don't care who you are, you must stay here today. The gym owner shouted and waved his hand towards the side. Go. Kill them for me. As soon as he finished speaking, a ball of fire exploded on the building next to him, which was particularly conspicuous in the darkness. Before everyone could see clearly, the fire jumped down, and after a short stay in the air, it actually burst into a more violent fire. With the thrust of the explosion, it accelerated in the air, like a meteor falling to the ground, breaking through the night sky and crashing towards Heracross. The moment they landed, they touched and exploded at the same time. Heracross had no time to react and was thrown out. He lay on the ground, his body charred and unable to get up. When the flames dissipated, the figure surrounded by the flames was seen clearly. The figure was a standing human figure, with an eagle-like head and a beak, sharp eyes, white feathers on the upper body, especially exaggerated on the head, and a V-shaped red crown on the forehead. The hands were 3-toed chicken claws, and from the forearms, you could see skin textures similar to bandages. The lower body was fiery red, turning orange-yellow to the calves, and the feathers were also thick, looking like cotton pants. The feet were also like chicken claws, with 3 toes with sharp claws, and they were terribly thick. This was not the most obvious feature. The most obvious should be the flames bursting from the wrists and ankles. The visitor was actually Flame Chicken, one of the 3 great families in the Hone region. Others may not have seen it clearly just now, but Xiu could see that Flame Chicken jumped up from the building, with flames bursting out of its legs and then kicking Heracross. Just one kick destroyed the combat power of one of the gym leaders. You can imagine the combat power of this Flame Chicken. No wonder Miss Joy thought of Joy seeing first, as expected, This kind of simple person can become Joy. Flame Chicken's powerful appearance frustrated the arrogance of those students, and the situation changed again. And Joy has begun to organize a new attack. As the Pokeballs were released one by one, the Pokemons consumed just now were immediately replenished, and even more were needed. Who can bear this? Flame Chicken did not stay for too long and burst into flames again. This time it chose the giant hornet as its target. Shiu saw that the situation was stable and did not stay for too long, and his figure slowly disappeared into the darkness. While they were fighting, he went around to the other side and sneaked into the room where the gym leader just ran out. Shiu waved his hand, and Casey, who was following him, began to use his superpowers. A halo expanded and instantly filled the entire room. The scan was completed in less than 2 seconds. He easily found a secret compartment and opened it with the help of superpowers. Inside, there were neatly stacked piles of large denomination cash. It was roughly estimated that there were millions of dollars. Shiu was naturally merciless. He opened the space backpack and the money was thrown into it under the guidance of superpowers. Shiu did not stop and continued to search in the secret compartment. Sure enough, there was a list, which was the list of those who received training here, and there were more than 50 people. In addition, there were 2 tapes. Although I don't know what the content is, according to the list, the owner of the hall must have prepared countermeasures. The rest are some letter books and high-level rare materials such as evolution stones. Shiu didn't care so much. Anyway, he stuffed them all into the bag and checked them slowly when he got back. In less than a minute, the noise outside began to become sparse, and it seemed that the winner was almost decided. Shiu quickly closed the secret compartment, searched again to make sure nothing was missed, then escaped through the window, and then went back to the front battlefield. As expected, the situation was similar to what he guessed. No matter how brave the giant bee was, it could not stop the equally extraordinary Blaziken. It was now charred on the ground, and its life or death was unknown. After losing its restraint, the Blaziken went on a killing spree, and the students who were originally overwhelmed by numbers collapsed instantly. Even though the gym owner tried his best to reorganize the defense line, the flames sprayed from Blaziken's hands completely killed his last hope. Shiu came out at this time and shouted in a dull voice. "Surround them, don't leave any alive." As soon as he finished shouting, the elves began to change their formation and spread out to double team. The apprentices immediately panicked when they saw this, and when the first one started to run away, the ones behind also scattered. The gym owner was also powerless to save the situation, and Blaziken had already set his sights on him and rushed over first. "Hold it!" At this time, he didn't care, leaving instructions to the beadrill guarding beside him, and ran back to the room just now. But soon there was a wailing sound in the room, and a person rushed out, running for his life in the distance. He didn't even look at the beadrill he left behind. Joey saw the gym owner running away, commanded the Blaziken to kill the beadrill, and then chased after it without saying a word. As for those students, there was no room for resistance in the originally designed plan. They were all caught and squatted on the ground in rows. Shiu stood up at this moment, looked at the students, and said to the people around him, "Dispose of it, remember to keep your hands and feet clean." After saying that, Shiu also chased in that direction. There was only wailing and screaming left in the place. When the factions in the gym were fighting, the real students left, and those who remained were the direct descendants of the gym leader. The gym owner is also a parallel importer and doesn't know how to run a gym. They have no serious source of income at all. He relied on his status as a trainer to bully the people. He did the same things as Team Rocket, but he was just wearing a gym skin. Death is not a pity. What's more, if you put on a full show, how can the undead scare those people? How can human speed be compared to that of a flame chicken? Even though the gym owner threw some cannon fodder elves one after another to stop him, he was still intercepted in an open environment. It just seemed to Xiu that it was more like a flame chicken driving it to a designated location. The owner of the museum rushed out of the building complex, suddenly slowed down, looked around, and found that there was no condition to block his escape. He couldn't help but turn around and look at Joey Singh, who was shrouded in shadow, and shouted angrily. "Who are you? Why do you want to kill everyone? Do you know that I am the leader of a gym approved by the Alliance? Adventurer of the Elf World." Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 197. Joey Singh walked out slowly in silence, with the nearly 2-meter tall flame chicken next to her. This gesture already showed that it was useless to talk. No matter how stupid the gym owner was, he knew that the enemy had no intention of giving him a chance to live. Adding to the Pokemon that besieged the gym before and the things that were lost in the secret compartment, he seemed to understand something, and his face looked a little ferocious. "If you don't want me to have a good life, then you don't want to have a good life either." Then he took out a Pokeball with a serious face, and his expression was a little struggling, but he quickly gritted his teeth and threw it out. A red light shot out from the Pokeball, and a Pokemon appeared on the field. When they saw the Pokemon, Xiu and Joey Singh stopped where they were, but the gym owner ran away without looking back the moment he threw the Pokeball. The Pokemon was a Beedrill, but it was different from an ordinary Beedrill. Its body is even thinner, and its abdomen is streamlined. The bone guns in its hands are full of various marks, which can be called battle scars. It is obvious that this is a giant bee that has experienced many battles. But it is now very old, and the wings behind it are weak, causing the body that should have been suspended in the air to have some small fluctuations, and its eyes are turbid and white. Although old, this giant bee has a very strange momentum. Just stopping there makes Xiu and others dare not make more moves, as if the bone gun can ignore the distance and pick it up directly in the next second. But that is just the residual power. Xiao Yuxing and her flame chicken don't buy it. They took a step forward and broke that momentum. But just when Xiao Yuxing was about to make a move, Xiu's hand was on her shoulder. "The plan is more important, leave it to me." "But..." Xiao Yuxing looked back at Xiu, wanting to remind him that this giant bee is not simple. "Don't underestimate me," Xiu interrupted her with a smile, threw the Pokeball backhand, and the giant claw mantis appeared on the field, which was even taller than the flame chicken. Although Xiao Yuxing was a little curious after seeing this strange giant claw mantis, she also knew that she could not stay too long now, so she just reminded Xiu to be careful and then bypassed the Beedrill and rushed over. As soon as the giant claw mantis came out, it felt the strong pressure and stared at the opposite side. However, Xiu did not mean to start a fight. After gently patting the giant claw mantis's arm, he walked forward and slowly approached the Beedrill, and said something. "I have no ill will towards you. I am here to investigate the sudden death of the previous gym leader. I am not your enemy." The Beedrill seemed to be touched by this, but the reaction was slow. It just looked at Xiu's side according to the sound, as if it had lost its visual ability. Seeing this, Xiu was more certain of his guess and continued to talk. "Is your trainer the previous gym leader? What is the relationship between the death of the gym leader and the man just now?" However, even if Xiu approached, the reaction of the giant bee was not strong. It had no desire to attack at all. It just kept adjusting, as if trying to sense the outside world. Xiu also noticed something, raised his hand to summon the Pokeball that was discarded on the ground, and tried to take it back into the Pokeball. It was successful just like that. This made Xiu feel inexplicably confused. Originally, they were ready to attack if the negotiation failed, but they didn't expect it to lose the ability to fight. Xiu looked at the Pokeball with strange patterns on his hand and realized that this was a customized Pokeball. This shows that this giant bee may really be the main force of the previous gym leader. However, it is not advisable to stay here for a long time. After Xiu took back the giant claw mantis, he cleaned up the traces and left the place. It felt like following Joey Seeing in front. But when he went up, he saw Flame Chicken fighting with a big armor, and the man was trapped in one place. "What's the situation?" Xiu's voice came, and Joey Seeing looked back. Xiao Yuxing was surprised that Xiu could appear so quickly, but she did not ask what happened just now, but cast her eyes on the field. According to the intelligence, he has another one. Don't delay, just beat him seriously. If you continue like this, many people will be suspicious. Xiu looked down coldly, as if he was a little dissatisfied with Xiao Yuxing's efficiency. Xiao Yuxing did not intend to refute, but honestly gave instructions to Flame Chicken. Flame Chicken, who was still fighting, suddenly burst out of the wrist and covered his fists, and then punched. The moment the fist touched the armor, the flame took the opportunity to wrap it up, forming a fireball, and the powerful force brought by the fist even knocked the armor away. When the flames dissipated after landing, how could there be a chance of survival? Looking at the wisps of white smoke rising from the charred shell, it was probably cooked. But at this time, the sound of a vehicle braking rapidly suddenly came from the outside world. Hearing this, the gym owner, who was already desperate, couldn't help but be overjoyed and shouted to the outside, trying to seize this ray of life. The Flame Chicken seemed to notice this, and suddenly jumped up. A circle of flames burst out from its legs, and it turned into a flaming meteor and kicked towards him again. Boom! The building collapsed, and the Flame Chicken jumped out on the rubble. "I'm leaving first." After saying this, Xiu ran away directly. His movements were neat and smooth, and he had no intention of caring about Joey Seeing at all. Joey Seeing could only smile bitterly and fled with Flame Chicken. At this time, the official rapid response team rushed over. "Quick, quick, quick. There are signs of life here, not dead yet. There are wounded here. Go chase the murderer." The official was professional, and soon got the gym owner out of the ruins, but at this time, the dust covered his whole body, and there were multiple fractures all over his body, but he was still alive and saved his life. But another figure in the ruins was not good. A large bee with a directly disappeared abdomen was dragged out. Obviously, the kick just now hit it and directly kicked its abdomen. And it was because of this that the gym owner survived. Soon the ambulance of the Pokemon Center appeared and took him to the hospital for treatment. But the two cars that the rapid response team drove when they left were not the cars that took them there before. The originally exaggerated situation returned to calm in just half an hour, but there were many little Rattata wandering around, trying to get some interesting information. As for Xiu, he had already gone somewhere. He was never used to counting the harvest at home. If there was any problem, it would be troublesome. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 198. Old Town. Another unknown abandoned house, but compared to the two houses he visited before, this one looked more like a ruin. It looked like the original owner had moved away and it was abandoned. But it wasn't a big problem for Xiu. After checking the surroundings, Xiu temporarily calmed down and counted the gains of this trip with Casey. First, there were 7.62 million in cash with a denomination of 1,000 yuan. There was nothing wrong with it. These should be part of the transaction between those people and the gym owner to help him train those criminals. As for some messy resources, the specific price is hard to say, but it must be worth a lot of money to be hidden by him. Then there were the deeds, account books and other gym-related items. Xiu roughly flipped through the records and found that this should be the internal account, and the data recorded was more accurate. From the income records, it seemed that the gym originally had several commercial shops in the center of Tokiwa City, but I don't know why they suddenly disappeared. Xiu was stunned when he saw this, and flipped through the deeds again. Sure enough, there were no such places. No matter how stupid those people were, they shouldn't have gotten to this point by collecting rent. How come they are gone? Xiu, who didn't know why, could only temporarily suppress his thoughts and continue to check other things. For example, those letters and tapes. As expected, although this gym owner is useless, he is also cautious and cunning. The content of those tapes is exactly the details of him and someone discussing the training of that group of people. The price was once discussed at the level of tens of millions, but it was reduced to 8 million. There are some other details, but Jiu frowned after hearing this. These things are not a threat at all, and they are all conveyed through middlemen. Shit. What a cunning old fox. Xiu cursed inwardly, but quickly calmed down and sorted out the relevant parts. It is impossible to hand over materials such as evolution stones. He has no habit of returning empty-handed. But the remaining ones can all be handed over. Without Joey's approval, the deed is just a piece of waste paper, and this place involves many things, and Jiu is unwilling to be dragged into it. Only money is the most real thing. After the things were cleaned up, Xiu took out a pokeball with a yellow pattern with a serious expression, and held it in his hand for a long time. This thing is indeed more advanced than the red and white ball, and it is also very obvious that it belongs to the style of this gym. I don't know why it fell into the hands of this gym owner. Combined with the situation just now, Xiu hesitated for a moment and then opened it. The strange giant bee appeared again. Xiu tried to communicate with language, but it was still in a state similar to Alzheimer's disease. It was confused and any movement was a little confused. It seemed that it didn't know what it was doing and didn't respond to his words. Xiu turned to look at Casey, and then turned back to the giant bee and said, "I am here to investigate the cause of death of the previous gym owner. Sorry for the offense." After that, Xiu closed his eyes, and the superpowers began to surround the giant bee and spread to its body. Telepathy is a relatively gentle way of contact. With the help of superpowers, both parties can break away from the limitations of language and communicate with the most direct emotions and thoughts. But the method that has always been successful has encountered trouble. As soon as the side touched, the originally confused giant bee suddenly raised its head, and its turbid eyes actually burst into a glimmer of light. Even in this dim environment, Xiu also noticed this scene. And those superpowers close to the giant bee were actually pushed away. This is the first time that Xiu encountered this situation. He had to raise his hand and press down to let Casey stop first. The thick superpowers wrapped him, fearing that the giant bee would poke at him in the next second. But the scene just now seemed to exist only in his fantasy. When he reacted, the giant bee was still in a state where it couldn't even fly steadily. Difficult. This is the first time that Xiu encountered this situation, and he didn't dare to do it for a while. Watching it slowly shake its head to try to sense the situation outside, Xiu couldn't help but sigh. Forget it, let's talk about this later. After saying that, he asked Casey to remove the superpowers surrounding it, and then took out water and nutrient paste to feed it. When the food reached its mouth, the giant bee had some obvious reactions and ate a little bit. I don't know if it was too hungry, but this giant bee didn't stop after eating 2 tubes. Instead, it had a strong desire to eat and fell into a biological instinct. Xiu was not in a hurry, so he fed it slowly, and took this opportunity to mutter something, and kept observing its condition. It was a bit strange, most of the scars on its body were concentrated on the double stings, and there were no old scars on its body. And its condition was not good, not only because of aging, but also because of some other conditions, such as long-term dormancy and confinement. I thought it was really so thin when I saw it from a distance before, but as it ate and drank water, its condition showed a significant recovery, and its shriveled abdomen gradually began to recover a little. Now it seems that the owner of the gym may not have fed it, which caused it to become like this. Fortunately, this pokeball is also a good thing, otherwise it would be really hopeless if it hibernated for such a long time. It seems that Xiu has found a way to feed it constantly, since he has a lot of supplies anyway. After swallowing a few tubes of nutrition cream and a few bottles of water, the most obvious feeling that the giant bee gave Xiu was that its wings flapped more vigorously, and its eyes gradually became clearer. Although it still looked turbid, it was much better than before. As if it had reached a critical point, the giant bee suddenly stopped eating, and the distance between the two was pulled apart between the flapping of its wings, as if it was exploring the surrounding situation. Alive. Xiu couldn't help but smile with relief when he looked at its figure. But his smile seemed to make the giant bee discover something, and it turned its head to look over here, raising its two guns slightly, intending to attack. It was me. I saved you. Xiu was also worried about accidental injury, so he quickly explained. Fortunately, his whispering in the giant bee's ear just now worked, and it didn't seem to be too hostile to Xiu, but slowly relaxed with Xiu's words. I'm not a bad person, I'm here to help you. After Xiu slightly comforted the somewhat confused giant bee, he signaled Casey to use telepathy. This time it was quite successful. The easiest way to communicate is always through direct emotions, not words. Xiu directly said that he had no ill intentions, and Beedrill understood. Are you the Pokemon of the previous gym owner? Why did he die suddenly? Is there any reason for this and the current gym owner? The meaning of Xiu's words was conveyed, and Beedrill, who was originally quite stable, showed obvious emotional fluctuations, and even instinctively resisted the contact with Casey's superpowers. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 199. Feeling the intermittent telepathy, Xiu had to comfort him and finally stabilized his emotional fluctuations. It was only then that Xiu remembered that the IQ of a Pokemon like Beedrill was not high, and it was difficult to communicate directly with Casey. Moreover, it had already aged, which had a more obvious impact on its communication ability, which meant that the space for communication was even narrower. Xiu made up his mind and took the initiative to disconnect the telepathy, and Casey seemed to understand what he meant. His superpowers rushed out to control Beedrill and then invaded. With so much experimental data to support it, Casey had already been familiar with flipping through its remaining memories. The Beedrill floated in the air blankly, also showing a thoughtful expression, without obvious struggle. Xiu closed his eyes and entered the world of Beedrill. His parents were also Pokemon cultivated in the gym. At the beginning, there was a group of hornworms born with him, but only he was selected by one person. The picture was very clear, and Xiu also saw the person who brought it down from the tree. It was a bronze-skinned young man with a short haircut. The memory of the training afterwards was intermittent, and Xiu only vaguely felt some of it. Apparently, Beedrill didn't have a very deep memory of this aspect. Then there were the days when that person took it to participate in various battles. These were not important, but Xiu could feel that Beedrill was obviously excited about this part. The memory was intermittent, and sometimes there were some chaotic and repeated images, which made Xiu's head big. He could only try his best to maintain it and try to explore more information. Whew. After a long time, Xiu opened his eyes and exhaled a heavy breath. Pokemons are much more difficult to deal with than humans. The slightest stimulation here will arouse their instinctive resistance, and there will be a confrontation between energies. Moreover, the brain circuits of Pokemons are too different from those of humans. Forcing them to see only feels chaotic. But Xiu also gained a lot. After taking a look at the Beedrill that was still in his memory, Xiu took out the Pokeball and put it back, then packed up and rushed to a place. The raid was carried out in the early hours of the morning. After such an operation, the sky was still dark, with only the moonlight and street lights providing a glimmer of light. Xiu's figure appeared in the gym again, but this place was remote, and this side belonged to the gym, and few people lived there, so even the movement just now did not cause much reaction. Just getting close could smell a strong smell of blood, and the result of the fight just now was written here. The ground was full of corpses of various elves and humans, and broken limbs and pieces of meat were everywhere, and the bloodiness was obvious. However, Xiu was indifferent to these things and was not affected at all. He floated into the gym. The gym covers a large area and is very old, which leads to its complex architecture. However, it can be roughly divided into two courtyards, inner and outer. The main structure of the outer courtyard was built in the past 10 years. It is a reinforced concrete structure with a modern style. There are a series of facilities such as student dormitories and training grounds. Ordinary apprentices or messy people like stewards are active in the outer courtyard. The inner courtyard is deeper inside, which is where core members can enter. This was the real dojo back then, but with the expansion and popularization of various modern conveniences, the inner courtyard gradually became a place similar to an ancestral hall, a place with sacrificial functions. As for the core members, they all moved to the outer courtyard to live. They just fought in the outer courtyard, and Xiu is going to the inner courtyard now. The environment here is quite complicated, but Xiu, who has searched his memory, is like an acquaintance who has been here many times. He easily walks through the small paths and quickly arrives at a courtyard hidden in a modern building. Looking at it in the moonlight, an ancient-style building made of bricks, stones, and wood appears. Outside is a circle of low walls with little protection. You can see the plaque hanging at the door, which is engraved with the words Feng Mang. It's just that it hasn't been taken care of for a long time, and the large gold-plated characters have been suppressed by dust, looking dim. Extending your eyes inside, you can see an old tree with lush branches and leaves in the courtyard of the inner courtyard. The size seems to cover the entire inner courtyard below. You can imagine how big this tree is. There were still many ropes as thick as arms hanging from the tree, but it looked like it had not been maintained, so many of them had been scattered or broken, and it looked very dilapidated. Xiu moved casually, drifted over that side, and directly climbed over the outer wall to the big tree, walked around the treetop, and then released the bead rill from the poke ball. Although the bead rill with energy replenishment was still old, it had recovered a little, at least it could feel the familiar environment around it. And this tree. The bead rill approached the tree, its two needles touched each other, and then flew around the tree, flying higher and higher. Seeing this, Xiu quickly called Casey to follow. The tree was dozens of meters high, and the bead rill flew all the way up and finally landed on a branch of the tree canopy, and then just lay on it. Xiu and Casey followed silently behind and watched it, and suddenly Casey said something. This is where it was born. Xiu also realized something and looked around. It seemed to be true. I don't know how many years have passed, but there is no change. This tree is really magical. Xiu didn't mean to urge it, so he just walked around. The branches were thick, so Xiu didn't need Casey to hold him for a long time, but walked carefully on them. It must be said that this tree was really big, and a single branch was enough for him to explore for a long time. After a brief stroll, he found that there were actually many traces of Pokemon living on the tree. Thinking that Beedrill was born here, there should have been a group of Beedrills living here at that time, but for some reason there are no Pokemons active now. It's just that it feels good to look at the entire gym and even the entire Viridian city from the top of the tree, but unfortunately Xiu didn't have the mood to appreciate it in this situation. But suddenly, Xiu seemed to feel something, looked up at the sky, and a faint light pierced the night. The morning light broke. Xiu was stunned, and the Beedrill lying on the trunk seemed to feel something, looking into the distance, and after a moment, it flapped its wings and flew up, rushing towards the treetop. It's moving. Cassie's words made Xiu turn around, and he didn't hesitate, and immediately followed. The giant bee was obviously very familiar with this place. Even though it couldn't see clearly, it still moved easily in the complex environment of intersecting branches. On the contrary, Xiu was not as fast as he could because of his inconvenience in moving. He could only keep up with Casey's superpowers. Adventurer of the Elf World. Author, Wu Nangkuang Song. Chapter 200. The beedrill stopped when it was about to break through the tree canopy and landed on a knot. But its next move puzzled Xiu. It actually looked at him. What does this mean? Xiu looked at it, but found that the beedrill at this time was different from the confused look before. Instead, it had a very calm feeling. There had been no fights in the previous encounters, so Xiu was not afraid of it. He immediately climbed up and came to the forked knot. Even though the branches were as thick as thighs near the end, Xiu was very stable when he stepped on them. The beedrill raised his right hand and pointed at one of them, then knocked it lightly. Xiu naturally noticed it, and with the help of Casey's superpowers, he found that there was indeed a cavity in it. Then I'll dig it open, Xiu said to it first, and then made sure that it didn't react before he started, so as not to cause any trouble. He picked up a knife with his gloved hand and carefully pried open the bark, and found that there was an embedded box underneath. Xiu took out the palm-sized box with great effort and looked at it carefully. There was no rust, and it could be seen that the box was made of special metal, and it was cast a long time ago and was exquisitely made. The subtle marks on it showed that the box was not used many times, and from the way it was sealed, it was not meant to be opened frequently. It seemed that the ancient tree had swallowed the box directly and became a tree tumor. I don't know what it is for. What is worth hiding like this? Xiu did not open it, but handed the box to the giant bee, but it pushed it away with its back hand. Then I'm going to open it. Xiu didn't care so much, and pried open the wax seal with a knife, but he was a little confused after opening it. Inside was a glass bottle in an unknown leather bag, and the mouth of the bottle was also sealed with wax, and a piece of paper could be seen inside. Before Xiu could observe carefully, the giant bee flew downwards, and Xiu had to temporarily put away the box and follow it. Although it was dawn, the fog over the city was still heavy, causing the sky to be still grey now. The beedrill landed in front of the building but did not go in, as if waiting for Xiu to come. Xiu walked over eagerly as soon as he landed. He understood what the beedrill wanted to tell him, which obviously involved the secret of this ancient gem. He looked at the wooden door, weighed the lock outside, and then the sound of metal collision was heard out of thin air, and the lock opened. Casey's superpowers had been spread out, and Xiu pushed the door open without hesitation. The beedrill flew in when he saw this, and Xiu followed slowly. In the faint morning light, Xiu observed the situation inside. As soon as he stepped in, he felt a rotten smell in the air, as if it had been accumulated for a long time without flowing. As soon as the door was opened, it rushed to the door, and the feeling was particularly obvious. There was a thick layer of dust on the furniture, and it seemed that no one had been in and out for a long time. In fact, when he was outside, Xiu found some problems, that is, no one might have come here for a long time. Let alone the fallen leaves piled up outside, such an ancient building with a bit of history must be frequently visited and repaired. If it lacks popularity, its decline will be particularly obvious. The beedrill didn't wander around like him, but flew straight inside, and Xiu had to hurry up and follow. The hall was separated by a screen, and the beedrill bypassed it and went to another room through the corridor on the side. There was no door lock here, and it opened with just a slight push, and this room also made Xiu feel a little curious. This is a library, with 3 large and small bookshelves, which were neatly arranged on the 3 walls. There were also many books on the shelves, and the handwritten books were basically handwritten according to the book covers, which was very scary, but it seemed that no one had been here for a long time. I picked up a book at random and flipped through it. It was really copied, and most of it was the author's research on elves. After flipping through several books in a row, Xiu found that they were very different. They should be the works of those core disciples. Good guy. Xiu felt sorry for him. If he had started here, why would he have to roll around on the ground with such great effort? Even if he didn't achieve the effect of sign into the gym for a year, and you'll be invincible when you go out, after staying here for a year, he wouldn't have to take risks and bear huge risks and pressure. One of the foundations of the gym was just left here, unattended and unmaintained. Did that stupid gym owner really understand what the real wealth of the gym is? Xiu couldn't help but feel angry when he saw such a waste of resources, and his expression was gloomy. The bead rill circled back and forth in the room, and it stopped in front of a bookshelf for a long time, then turned its head to look at Xiu. When he came to the bead rill, he saw it pointing at the bookshelf. Xiu didn't understand why, so he took down the book it pointed at. He flipped through the catalog, which also contained research on Pokemon, but was there anything special about it? It was just that Xiu noticed the empty space on the bookshelf. As if thinking of something, Xiu glanced at Casey and used his superpowers to infiltrate behind the bookshelf, but it was just an ordinary brick and stone structure, and there was no secret room or other space. Confused for a moment, Xiu could only look at the bead rill, hoping to get its hint. But the bead rill still looked at the bookshelf and did not give any more instructions. Xiu refocused his attention on the bookshelf and put the book back. Maybe he had guessed wrong what bead rill meant. It was not this book, but this bookshelf. It's just that this bookshelf is similar to other styles, and there is nothing special about it. Compared to slowly exploring and checking, Xiu prefers to use external plug-ins. The superpowers extend along the wooden bookshelf and gradually penetrate into its interior. Soon, news came from Casey. Found something special on the side of the bookshelf. Xiu immediately squatted down and fiddled with it for a long time before finding some gaps in the patterns. Pressed hard and broke it apart, and then a small pull ring as thick as a thumb appeared. Xiu reached out without hesitation when he saw this. As he pulled hard, the sound of mechanical transmission appeared in the quiet study. With a click, a cloud of dust was raised, but it had little effect on Xiu, who was holding his breath. He listened to the sound and looked up along the bookshelf. The movement just now was made by the beam above. Xiu didn't care so much and quickly flew up with the help of Casey. This kind of ancient building originally relied on these woods for support. There were 5 such large woods inside the room, 4 corners and a horizontal beam, and the horizontal beam was the thickest. He hadn't paid attention to it, but he didn't expect it to be here.